Hello. Hi. My name is Ashley Parker Snyder. I am with Fess Parker Winery and Addendum this evening, and have these handsome guys next to me. To my left is Blair Fox, who came on board with us in 2003 as our Rhone varietal specialist, and then he was promoted to head winemaker in 2005. And to my right is Tim Snyder. He is a winery president, and he actually was promoted from boyfriend to husband in 2000. So, seriously though, our fabulous winery president. Thank you all for logging on tonight to talk about our new project, Addendum. There may be some of you out there who are old enough to remember Fess Parker before the wine, when he was an actor, born and raised in Texas, and came to California to become an actor, and ended up in the right place at the right time, and was put under personal contract to Walt Disney. And as a result of that, I think really became intrigued with business and demographics and that kind of thing, and moved us all out of Los Angeles and up to the Santa Barbara area in the early 60s, and got interested and busy developing a hotel and some other small projects in Santa Barbara. And truth be told, I think he saw the potential of Santa Barbara wine country initially more as a destination than even a growing region, but he was hooked. And at the first opportunity, bought a ranch in 1988 up in the San Ynez Valley. And initially we were going to plant some grapes and sell the fruit to other producers. There were only 11 producers in the Santa Barbara County Vintners Association at that time. We were going to sell some fruit to other folks, but I always joked that Fess is from Texas and he couldn't do anything small. So here we are almost 30 years later, and we produce Burgundian and Rhone varietals primarily, and very much a family business. And we have a little inn in Los Olivos, the Fess Parker Wine Country Inn. We just opened a new restaurant called the Baron's Star, which has a really exciting and challenging refined ranch cuisine concept, where we are raising our own Wagyu cattle, and we have an orchard and a huge garden, and chickens and ducks and quail and all sorts of great things going on out there. And Fess passed away in 2010, as some of you may know, but I think he'd really be excited about everything we're doing as a family business. We have third generation involved, which is great. We've got a ways to go before we catch up with the Antinoris, but we'll keep plugging away. But Addendum, I think, would really be something that he would be very proud of and excited about. I'm going to turn it over to Blair to talk a little bit more specifically about the wines and the vineyard, but needless to say, I think we feel like we're continuing to conquer new frontiers, and we're having a good time doing it as a family. So I hope you enjoy the wines, and I'm going to let Blair take you through them.
Thanks, Ashley. So I was actually born and raised in Santa Barbara, and always wanted to come back to Santa Barbara. Actually went to UC Davis, and always wanted to come back to Santa Barbara and make wine in Santa Barbara. And like Ashley was saying, we typically specialize more in Syrah, Rhone varieties, and then Pinot Noir, Burgundian varieties. But while at Davis, I met some extraordinary classmates who stayed in the Napa area and made wines for high-end areas like Vineyard 29 and Screaming Eagle and guys like that. So it's fun for me to have kind of a new grasp at Cabernet and working with outstanding vineyards in the Napa area. We started working with Stagecoach Vineyard in 2007 with Syrah, and made that for our Epiphany program, where I met Jan Krupp, who's the owner and mind behind the vineyard, where basically he had to dynamite out enormous amounts of granite just to be able to plant grapes on this huge mountain hillside. And so once the Addendum project started up, he was a natural resource for me to reach out to, and so I reached out to him about Cabernet. So one of these Cabernets in the glass here, I think it's the second one in, is actually from Stagecoach. And I also pulled a few strings and looked into Rutherford and found an amazing vineyard there down in the flats, kind of an old historic vineyard. And we sourced grapes for the Addendum project from this Rutherford vineyard as well. And that's in the first glass. And then the third glass here is actually a combination of the two vineyards. So I kind of cherry pick out what I feel are the best barrels, blend those together for the vineyard designates, and then the third glass is a commingled blend of the two different vineyards. And then a kind of fun final blend here is a blend of that Syrah and Cabernet, with Cabernet being the dominant percentage from Stagecoach. So that's what we have to look forward to tasting right now. Tim?
Excellent. Thank you. So for any of you who may know me, I've met several of you, I think, over the years. This is probably the longest that I've sat silent at a meeting ever. But thank you for joining us. And please feel free to start tasting. We will be talking more about these wines more specifically as we go. But you know, I hope you don't have 4 glasses just in front of you and you're waiting on us. Please feel free to get going. What I'd like to do though is just talk a little bit about why we decided to go north. We have been a winemaking family in Santa Barbara, as Ashley was talking about, for over 25 years. And really, I think, done some really nice things. Blair and his team have done some really nice things in elevating the overall quality and style of our wines, mostly Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and Rhone varietals. We have some wonderful established vineyards there. And I think that we're very proud of what we've been able to do. Although not content, we're still trying to always look for new things, new opportunities, and ways to improve what we're doing there. We also launched a sparkling program in 2000, vintage 2013 was technically the first vintage, and started really capitalizing on some of the wonderful acidities and bright freshness of the fruit in Santa Rita Hills as we got into the sparkling wine business. So we had Pinot Noir, we had Chardonnay, the Burgundian end covered. With our Epiphany program, we had the Rhone varietals covered fairly well, and then we've gotten into the sparkling wine with our festivity lineup, and we do put 2 S's in there purposefully. It's been questioned a couple times, believe it or not. So we really thought that a next step, a next opportunity, a next frontier, if you will, to use a little bit of a fascism, was to look at Bordeaux varieties. And I think we, as Blair alluded to, he's had a little bit of experience with that and exposure with it. I personally grew up in Northern California. My family farmed Cabernet, so there's always been a soft spot in my heart for it. And I think we just are, as well as wine producers, are wine lovers and wine aficionados. Of course, it's one thing to aspire to do it, but it's another thing to be able to feel like you can do it well. And as Blair alluded to, once we started to sort of establish some of these vineyard relationships, I think we felt pretty comfortable that we had the right resources on the vineyard side, as well as great confidence in our winemaking team to produce these wines. And so we chose to move forward. So that's a little bit of why this sort of spirit of discovery, this looking for the next opportunity that is in the DNA of, was in the DNA of Fess himself. And I think throughout the family and our organization really drove the reason why we wanted to start this project in the first place. What I'd like to do is just, because I know that this question has come up, and is touch briefly on our contractual limitations with the use of the George III vineyard, which is the Rutherford vineyard, that went out in your first press kit, but we've asked you to help us in not referencing that vineyard source. Essentially, in a nutshell, there are 2 versions of a grape contract in working with that vineyard. Ours, which they call a standard contract, precludes us from not only citing the vineyard name on the label, which we realize, but also in any promotional material or references to the wine. The other version of the contract, which would allow us to use the name in a promotional manner, has many more provisions, and some of them were at odds of what we wanted to do or what we felt comfortable with as we launched this brand. For instance, there's a very specific minimum retail bottle price provision in that contract, which is higher, frankly, than what we where we felt comfortable launching these wines. So with a couple of those types of things, we certainly respect what they're trying to do. It's not unusual in our business. There are definitely well-known, well-respected vineyards that have these types of provisions that protect their other winery clients that are sourcing fruit from it. So we're respectful of that, and we hope and trust that you understand, and you'll also be respectful of not citing that name in any of your conversations about these wines. So thank you in advance for that. Maybe what we can do now is taste some of these wines together. You want to lead us through? We have some questions?
We have a couple of questions
Okay.
to start. So some of this has been touched upon a little bit, but Richard Jennings wants
Hello,
to
Richard.
know.
Nice to see you through the lens.
How did the project come about? Best Parker is so synonymous with Santa Barbara County. Why source fruit from Napa? And then kind of similarly, Jeff Kralik from Houston says diving into the Napa Cab game at this point in time must have been rather daunting. Did you have second thoughts?
Well, yes. Actually, I think to the first part we touched on a little bit, and to go a little bit deeper with that, I think that we see Addendum as an opportunity of building on a foundation that we have. And that's part of the reason that we went forward. I believe that if we all had supreme confidence that we could do Bordeaux varietals in Santa Barbara, to Richard's question and point, that we probably would have gone that route. But I think we all sort of feel like to play on a world-class scale and quality level with Cabernet, that we really needed to come out of the Santa Barbara County, and so we decided to come to Napa to do that. This is one of those unique places that really excels. In terms of second thoughts or daunting, maybe a little bit. We're just kind of getting started. So far it's a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of excitement. But it's a competitive field. But I think as you taste these wines, and as Blair tells you a little bit about the meticulous detail that goes into them, we feel pretty proud of this first effort. I think they'll continue to only improve as we all learn, and we feel pretty good about it.
I'm just going to jump in here as the least politically correct person sitting here and say we didn't get into the Napa Cab game so that we could charge a lot more for our wines. We got into it because we wanted to learn, we wanted the challenge, want to keep this guy, on his toes. And if our goal was just to make a Napa Cab so we could charge a lot of money for it, well, we would have that other contract and we would meet the minimum bottle price. So just please know, and total production on this, is less than 800 cases across all four of these wines. So that is by no means what we're going for. So.
And just to kind of put some context into it, that question also came from a rabble-rouser from Bowdoin. He said, I should have never agreed to this. First, I find out Tim went to Williams, and Ashley went to Bates. Go Bowdoin, crush the F-Men and the Bobcats.
Eefman. Let's
Sorry.
be accurate.
I'm
Yes.
so glad you mispronounced that. So anyway, I'm totally good with that.
NASCAC pride.
There's been a question, Tim, too, about the provenance of the name, and also maybe a little bit about the packaging, which I called out on Twitter, but you might want to.
Excellent, sure. Well, the name obviously alludes to the idea of building and adding on, right, to something that has been established. And that's something that, candidly, we take a lot of pride in, too, is, yes, we're kind of new as an organization to the Napa game, but we are not new to winemaking, obviously, and we feel like we're a winemaking family. And it's in our DNA, and it's something that is that's important to us. So it's really a next step, in addition to nearly 28 years of winemaking in Santa Barbara County, working with different varietals. And I think it's a way for us to continue to stay fresh, to stay current, to offer a broader selection of fantastic wines to our existing customer base, and hopefully reach some new people who maybe aren't familiar with Fess Parker, but maybe get introduced to us, our entire portfolio through Addendum, and become fans of Fess Parker down in Santa Barbara. With respect to packaging, we used a fantastic design team that has done a lot of work for us over the years. They're based up here in San Francisco. By the way, we are in Northern California today. We're coming to you live from San Francisco. Their name is
the only city air conditioned by God Himself.
That's correct. And Michael Osborne Design, they're fantastic. They did all the packaging for us. What we wanted to do was we wanted something that that was sophisticated, that was elegant, that had some of the quality cues that go back to Fess and the family, masculine, strong. Well, Fess, masculine, but also something that had some contemporary, more modern cues to it as well. And I think that the typeface really captured that, as well as the plus in the middle of the A, which is to indicate an addition, an addendum,
Is that
not necessarily
grade
a.
point average at Williams as well?
Yeah, that was not a grade point average at Williams, not even close, but
This guy.
but yeah. So hopefully we covered that.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Last question from Jeff on this. Why not go for the other contract and charge a premium? I'm glad you're not, but curious as to why.
Well, the main couple of reasons, obviously. Number one, the minimum bottle price was something that we just had a hard time getting comfortable with. Maybe at some point down the road, our feelings will change on that. But this is we like $95 as a release price. We think the wines. Our pricing philosophy has always been to deliver and maybe over deliver and to be fair. We want you to, whether it's a $14 bottle of Riesling, a $20 bottle of Chardonnay, or a $95 bottle of Addendum Cabernet, we want you to feel like you're getting more than your money's worth when you're drinking that wine. So that was really the biggest sticking point for us. There were some other issues in terms of duration of contract and things like that, which we probably could have gotten our arms around a little bit more. But again, we kind of feel like we want to walk before we run, and this is new to us, and we want to make sure that each step works and works right. So that's pretty much why we chose to go this route.
Let's talk about the wine.
Let's talk about the wines. Blair's been sipping. By the way, for you guys can't see on the other side of the camera, we have Kimberly and Alex and Greer over here, and they've been sipping this whole time.
And we've all been drinking all day. Let's just be honest.
And I noticed that you guys have bigger pours than we do, so I guess that's like home field advantage.
Production
No
crew
comments.
benefits.
Yeah, you were pouring,
I got
weren't
you.
you?
I got
Yeah.
you.
The talent must stay sober.
Yeah.
Also, when Blair launches in, but Thea would like to know at the end of the night what your favorite was compared to dinner on Monday. Yeah. Sorry, Blair, go for it.
Interesting. Since I don't have a ribeye in front of me.
So the first one, like we talked about, is the Skellinger Lane, all from Rutherford. I think you see that Rutherford dust in this wine. I mean, 14 was a big vintage, so these are opulent wines. I don't think they're heavy by any means or overripe, but definitely they are ripe, opulent wines. We also age all these Cabernets and the Syrah for an extended amount of barrel aging time, 28 months. So, that's probably on the outskirts of barrel aging typically. Most of the wines for Fess Parker are aged in the neighborhood of 18 to 20 months in terms of like Pinot Noirs and Syrahs. So we're taking this kind of on the outer levels of that, aging it longer. Aged entirely in Bordeaux 225-liter French oak barrels, thin stay barrels. But all this fruit is picked and taken to the winery in reefer trucks, or refrigerated trucks, and then it goes through our processing at Fess Parker and Los Olivos. So, what we do there is we hand sort everything. This is entirely destemmed. With lots of our Syrahs and Pinot Noir, we're actually including whole clusters, and this is entirely destemmed. And then it's actually berry sorted as well. So then we berry sort each individual berry before it goes into a closed top static fermenter. And then all of these wines, besides the Syrah that's blended into the last wine, are all static fermentations. So that means we're doing pump overs on all of them. And then pump over durations vary depending upon basically fermentation kinetics and what's happening with each wine. So this particular wine was in a tank for over a month. I think it was 36 days or something like that of maceration. And then it was basket pressed. All of the hard press was actually taken away from all of these Cabernets, and not added back. So, do you have any questions on the wine?
You know, if I may, Blair, maybe you can talk just a little bit about the difference that you're, using the closed top, the pump over and extended maceration, because we were talking about this, I thought it was interesting, with our Pinots and our Syrahs, we're doing, more open top fermentation, hand punch down to this traditional methods there, and you made the decision to use this different sort of fermentation, closed top, pump over, extended macerations, and what you were trying to achieve, and I think you did achieve in these wines.
I think I'm using, the knowledge of people who make a lot of Cabernet.
Yeah.
So in Bordeaux, typically, it's kind of those conical uprights, which are pump overs typically, and then also most of the Napa guys I know are also using closed top vessels for the majority of their fermentations. And Pinot Noir, I'd say it's the opposite. Again, like in Burgundy, it's probably mainly open top. I mean, at Fest Parker, we definitely do mainly open top. Along with Syrah, same thing, and in the Rhone Valley, it's mainly open top, I would say. I made wine in Australia, and it's all the open top, as well. Yeah. So all the Shiraz. So so and then the extended maceration comes in with trying to mitigate tannins and evolve tannins, and round out these tannins and make these wines not sharp and kind of not tannic, but round it out and make it a little bit more enjoyable and soft. Yeah.
Question on the 2014 growing vintage, since all these wines are from that vintage, and that comes from Dezelle in Virginia.
Thanks for the question, Dezelle. It's 14 was a warm vintage for sure. Very much a different vintage than 15. 14 was also a fairly large vintage for California in general, while 15 was one of the smallest vintages in the history, hottest, drought years, all that kind of stuff came into consideration. So 14 was a ripe, rich vintage in general. I'd say the 15 kind of was a little bit more of an elegant vintage. And then 16 is kind of a tweener, I guess, between those two.
And this is actually the perfect day to be tasting this wine. It's Rutherford Dust Day.
That's right. I forgot about that.
And Steve McIntosh up in Ohio says this is in many ways textbook Rutherford, though the dust is finer and more powdery. Is that intentional?
Well, thank you. I think that's a compliment. I think, again, this vineyard kind of has its own unique aspect to Rutherford, and the particular block that we use is actually an old block planted in the early 90s as well. So it's kind of on its into the maturity side, which I think creates a concentrated wine, but also, lends itself to having that kind of finer dust, a little bit more elegant style.
That's why we bring a winemaker, because without him, our answer would have been yes. Thank you. One of the things that maybe you could talk about too, Blair, is trying to bring some of the Fest Parker experience and sensibilities and things that have worked for us quite well, and extend it to this new brand, to Addendum, is the idea of single vineyard sites. And we do this obviously with Pinot Noir quite a bit, and Chardonnay, good point, and Syrah in our Fest Parker lineup. And I think that you've been able to capture the difference, create different wines, expressive wines, unique wines, by identifying different unique vineyard sites. But could you maybe talk a little bit about kind of the Skellinger Lane next to the Stagecoach, and maybe a little bit of the differences between the two, both in terms of the vineyard and also the wines?
Yeah. So I think, there's huge differences in the vineyard elevation, soil profiles. The soils are definitely more of kind of a clay, low-lying Rutherford. and then you have a high mountain southern aspect with Stagecoach. I think Stagecoach kind of has that more mountain character. You know, it's a little more brambly, a little bit more wild in its aromatics. And I think you know, when I look at bricks, you know, the sugar levels were fairly similar in these two wines. So it's kind of one of those things where I think, you know, you're seeing just the differences of sight. You know, there's not a huge difference really in sugar levels and acid levels and pH and things like that. You're really just seeing these extreme sites that are very, very different. And I don't know how many people have driven up Soda Canyon, but I mean, it's a wild ride. And this vineyard is way up there at the top, and literally they had to dynamite out rock just to create a vineyard up there. And they also have their own rock quarry now, which they supply a huge amount of rock for, you know, homes and everything else around Napa, roads and all kinds of stuff.
I was going to make a smart ass remark, but I won't, about supplying rock to Gallo, but I'll leave it at that. Yeah.
Side too.
There's some other questions that have come up.
Okay.
Some of them are packaging related. One is about the heavy bottles. Jeff Kralik was curious. He said he's not a big fan of heavy bottles, but he wanted to know about your choice behind it. So he asked if you wouldn't mind sharing that.
I've always half-heartedly joked that I was going to lead the class action lawsuit with the heavy glass being, you know, schlepping these, our Syrah bottles are heavy like that too. And I think, you know, initially with our Syrah, we put them in this style bottle to be, I think, you know, we're probably a little optimistic, but, you know, we were trying to conjure up a Grange image. They use the same packaging. I think, you know, they're big wines. The glass is heavy. I know that's not eco-friendly, and at some point, we're definitely gonna have to address that issue. I don't know, from an ageability standpoint, is there any benefit to this glass, or
Yeah.
it's the look? So I agree.
Yeah.
So we'll get there.
Good point.
And Wine Julia would like to know, she's up in the Willamette, did elevation have a big influence on vineyard site selection?
Yeah, I mean, I think site selection was one of the biggest kind of motivating factors of choosing, you know, what these wines were going to be. So I'd say, and just showing the differences between the two sites and the wines. I think that's something that's kind of special. And like Tim was talking about before, I mean, you know, in other programs we have, we're looking at different clones that are in different elevations in the same vineyards and all these different things which show difference. But I'm a huge believer that elevation is something that's positive and makes high quality wines. And I think Stagecoach is a vineyard that proves that as well.
I remember when we were doing dosage blending on the bubbles, and you were like, we don't want them to all taste the same, you know?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we sell a lot of our wines direct to consumer, especially the festivity sparkling, and you know, as I said, there's only 800, you know, cases of these wines cumulative. I can't say cumulative.
In total?
In total. So much better. God, Williams.
You've been
you're so
drinking
smart.
all day.
Not really. But,
That's the problem.
but yeah, to have the difference in the vineyard sites and the different dosages, and you know, keep things interesting for people too.
Yeah,
And-
just one. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, and just do what you think is right, you know, for each varietal, and
I was just going to say, just a sort of a little teaser too. Tomorrow, Blair and I are going to be checking out a couple more sites in different AVAs. So we are getting confident here with this new program, and so we may be adding some additional AVAs within Napa Valley to the program if things go well tomorrow. So.
Right now we're actually getting a lot of questions about where folks can taste and purchase these wines. Particularly Michael Servin from Santa Barbara, your neighbor,
Yes.
asked, will Addendum wines be able to be tasted at the winery in the valley, or in the collective at the Funk Zone?
Currently on Brand Live. Yes, Brand Live is where you can taste these.
Exactly.
we're actually doing a refresh of a portion of our barrel room right now, specifically to be functioning as an Addendum tasting room. So yes, you will be able to come to the winery, we hope by September 9th, and enjoy the wines on site, definitely. I don't know that they'll end up at the Collective, I mean, given the really limited production.
Well, and Collective's very Santa Barbara oriented, so I don't think they'll be
Yeah.
there. I could see us doing a special evening presentation of these at the Collective, which we will invite you to, Michael, now that we're kind of back in touch.
We
and
all
you're
love, we all
local.
love the Collective, by the way.
Yeah,
It's great,
but-
in the Funk Zone. For all of you who haven't been to Santa Barbara, you must come.
And after you go to the Collective, walk around the corner and taste some
Yeah.
Fox wines. Who Blair has his own little tasting room right there too. But we'll absolutely have a space at Fest Park and Winery, and then beyond that, we're gonna see how things evolve.
Good old Jeff Kralik has another question about another wine in the Fess Parker line. He said he's sitting on a 2002 Big Easy. Should he hold it or pop it now?
I'm sorry, I did only tonight. We'll be back to talk about that later.
Yeah, I came back from Australia and actually blended those wines with Eli. And that 2002, I think that was the first
was.
year
Yeah.
of Big Easy, actually. And at
First
that
vintage.
point, it was 100% Syrah. Since then, it's changed into kind of a Syrah, Petite Syrah Grenache blend, more of kind of a red wine blend. But that was a tremendous wine, and I'd say it's probably drinking fantastic right now. It will definitely hold up to a few more years, depending upon storage and all that kind of thing. But that should taste very good.
If you do, let us know. Let us know what you think. So,
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of really great comments about the Stagecoach. Randy Fuller in LA, he said, pencil, shaving, sage, black olives, mocha, wow is all.
Thank you.
Wine Julia is saying Stagecoach does prove that elevation impacts wine positively and deliciously.
Cool.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I'm going to give a shout out for the little wine that we're not really talking a whole lot about, which is the Napa Cab, which is, if I recall correctly, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but 2/3 from Rutherford and 1/3 from Stagecoach. And what's been fun about this one, as I almost said it, is that I think you get a little bit of the best of both vineyards in this. And it's a little bit of a sleeper because I think we've been so infatuated with the single vineyard wines, as we tend to, and look at them next to each other. But this one, this last week, as we've been doing different tastings, it seems to be popping out as, just a fantastic version of Cab.
it seems, I have the worst palate in the room, I'm sure, but it seems like the tannins in this one are a little bit more prevalent. Does anybody else pick up on that? I don't know why. I mean, it's great. I love it. I think it's really well balanced, but just kind of curious as to why.
I like that.
Claire.
Well, I mean, the truth of the answer is that these two wines kind of were selected, like I said, like a cherry pick of what I thought were the best barrels. So from their independent vineyards, and then next kind of came what would work together as a blend.
Right.
So so different barrels, putting that together. I think I think it's a great little blend. I think it really does bring kind of the best of both worlds together and creates a nice fun wine.
And each of the single vineyard wines was 5 barrels? Is that correct? 5 barrels each?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it was 5 barrels of each of the single vineyard wines.
If that,
Not
yeah.
quite, yeah.
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 James Line Guy says, I notice your cabs are 100%. Are you considering other Bordeaux varieties to this program in the future?
Tim and I kind of spoke about that at one point, and I recently, and I'm kind of, trust me, I love blending in other varieties, but I think it's kind of unique and special to choose a single variety from a single vineyard, from a single kind of block, and concentrate on that as well, and really not have blending as an option in terms of other varieties. I mean, typically, that's how I operate with Pinot Noir. I know that's entirely different than Bordelais varieties, but I don't know. I think we've had this conversation, and I think having a unique kind of vineyard designated cab is something that probably we're going to stick with.
Yeah.
And
I think that's the direction we're going to go. Should we talk about the Cabernet Syrah blend now? obviously when we were putting that wine together, we weren't as sort of
Different animal.
Cabernet focused. Yeah. Are we supposed to read the hashtags?
Yeah, great. So just read
I was coached earlier to read
That'd be
hashtags.
nice if you don't
Just
mind.
for
Station
posterity's sake here, Twitter handle is at Addendum by Fest with a capital B on the by. Additional handle at Follow Fest, which is our Fest Parker parent Twitter, and hashtag Addendum Fest Parker. And then also you have at Charles Kong. Twitter, and a hashtag is hashtag all the swirl. So you have many options here this evening.
And Greer, you're the youngest person in the room, so you're going to explain to us why you're doing that.
We're just
means.
following.
Yeah.
We the three on this side
Such
of
a-
the
such
camera.
a dinosaur.
We're following direction. So
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Back to wine. Richard Jennings would like to know, can you tell us anything about the clones of Cabernet involved?
Yeah, so that's something I'm much better versed in, things like Syrah and Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. For me, it was more about the age of the blocks and frankly tasting the grapes and coming up, seeing a cab that I thought could be standalone. So that's really, I think one is clone. I think Stagecoach is clone 15, and then Rutherford. I'm not exactly sure what that clone was.
We
but-
can follow up.
Richard, you
Yeah.
should just be happy he's just not making it up, because that's what
Yeah.
the winemakers do most of the time.
No, that's what we do when winemakers are around to correct us.
Good.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Did anybody refute that? No? Great, we'll stick with it.
Yeah, but typically I'm looking at like the block within the vineyard and trying to choose that way as opposed to a specific clonal material.
And kind of going off that question, Jeff Kralik would like to know, working with Burgundian and Rhone varieties for so long, what were the challenges moving to Cabernet?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of scary to delve into this. I mean, it's not like
So like getting
it's not
called
like
from the miners.
Yeah, it's not like this is inexpensive fruit either, you know, to deal with. So luckily I didn't screw it up, I guess. This was our first vintage. I have made plenty of Bordelais varieties over the years. I mean, I used to work at a winery that was almost entirely Bordelais in Santa Barbara, and I made Cabernet in Australia along with Shiraz as well. So I mean, I've had plenty of experience with it, and I think I know what I'm doing. But I definitely did take notes, and you know, from guys that do this on a daily basis, almost exclusively. So.
Follow up with just one more comment before we move on to the last wine. Kim Johnston from Napa, Divine Wine Time, says these cabs are simply beautiful, and she would know, she's in Napa.
There you
Just
go.
the purest form
Thank
of
you.
what Napa cab really is. Excellent job.
Thank
Wow,
you.
that's awesome.
Thank you.
Thank
Ken.
you.
That's
Yeah.
a wonderful compliment. Good to hear as we come out with our first vintage. It's been, you know, I'll tell you one thing that's been interesting for me is it's been a long time since we're like really introducing a whole new thing.
Oh my god, it's like
Yeah.
having a baby. It's like, here's my baby.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the baby's so ugly.
Yeah. Everybody's gonna love it, right? And
See the baby.
so thank you for the compliments. They mean a lot to us, and it's been nice to have these wines be well received. Caps are up.
How's her up?
So we actually, for Epiphany, our Epiphany program, we do a Santa Barbara Syrah Cab. So we kind of thought it'd be fun and appropriate to do a Napa Valley Cab Syrah. So that's what this is.
So funny.
That's what this one is. I don't remember all the exact percentages.
56 Cab 44 Syrah.
There we go.
Yeah,
Thank you, Williams College.
I just studied it the other day.
So a little
Dominant
bit dominating Cabernet side, and all from Stagecoach as well. So this is again kind of showing off Stagecoach and its mountain fruit, and creating a fun blend from Cabernet and Syrah. This is also kind of a nod to Australia, and that's why we started it with Epiphany, because there's a lot of Cab Shiraz blends in Australia, and again we thought this would be just a fun blend for a Napa Cab.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why did you change the cooperage so much between all these wines?
So all the Cabernets are all in Bordeaux, French oak.
Uh-huh.
So we use Sylvain, we use Boot, we use Gamba, we use Boussuet, we use Terenceau. Now, I don't know if these 14s had Terenceau. I don't
This
think
one's
they did.
Francois Ferrer. I was just wondering why.
So that was Francois Ferrer. That was actually the Syrah portion was new Francois Ferrer in that
Okay.
portion, yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
We've had an interesting question earlier on from Wine Julia, again from the Willamette, about do you think you might ever explore the Willamette for Pinot, but maybe other cool climate grapes in your quest for new frontiers?
We just lost our Vintners Association executive director to Oregon.
To
so
Willamette.
we
You're
may,
getting a good
we
one.
may chase her up there. You're getting a really good one.
I
So
think Tim and I are going to be in Oregon at the end of
that's
the
For
right.
month,
IPNC. So if
yeah.
any of you are going to be at IPNC, we'll be up there. So maybe that trip will inform the answer to that question.
I don't get to go to IPNC. I'm the funny one, but I don't get to go. So.
Yeah, straight people only. The straight man. Straight man. Yeah. Sorry. I'm very open-minded. It's interesting though, as I just read that one of my favorite producers over, who makes wines from Sonoma Coast, Fela, just released
Really?
an Oregon Pinot Noir. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think right now we've now just in the last few years launched a brand new sparkling wine program and now a Napa Cab program. I think we're going to.
I'm pretty busy.
Blair, you got something else to do?
Blair and his winemaking team asked us to try to remain focused for at least a few years so they can catch their breath and digest it. So, but never say never. Maybe somewhere down the road.
Great. A couple of other questions, kind of from earlier. Blair, being down in Santa Barbara, how often do you get up to Napa during the growing season? This is from Jeff Kralik. Is it a pain?
It is a pain.
But he did tell me today he would rather drive to Napa than drive to Los Angeles.
That's
so
right.
I think that's a good sign.
It's hard. There's less traffic. You can leave and you know there's actually no traffic at certain times of the day.
The same amount of time.
Yeah, so I mean, I do come up here a few times a year. It depends on the vintage. I mean, 15 was tough because it was a super compact, tight year, but I was up here at least 2 times to 3 times during like the actual harvest period to make the decision when to pick the grapes. I do have good friends up here, like I've alluded to as well, that kind of go out and check the vineyards for me, taste, sample the grapes, send me numbers and things like that. So, but I do come up here and make all the final picking decisions, and when we're in, organize all the trucking and send up the bins and get that all kind of situated and happening. So it is difficult, obviously, because I'm spread pretty thin, but I definitely make the time to try to get as much time up here as possible.
Okay. A couple of other questions. I know we've slightly covered this. Jenna Francisco is going to be in Napa next week. She wants to know if there's anywhere else she might be able to taste the wines in the interim. I said our office.
Yeah, not yet.
Charles
not
Collins
yet.
Sencom.
Yeah, these will be our plan is to begin releasing these to the public in September.
She'll probably find something else to
Yeah.
taste that will be
Yeah.
incredibly delicious.
We could
She'll
give
be
her
okay.
we could give her some ideas.
All Dazel in Virginia says these wines are clearly built to age, but enjoyable with extended time in the decanter. What is the estimated drinking window on each?
I mean, I would say we try to give these, I think these wines will survive easily 15 years from vintage date, so easily. And I mean, you could probably push them into 20 if it's correct storage, temperature and humidity controlled. And they are built to age, and I think we do a lot of the aging in the barrel too. So upon release, you're also able to drink them.
They'll be very drinkable.
I think one of the things that's been interesting for us, this is brand new, so we don't have the luxury of history of going back and tasting, older vintage from this varietal from these vineyards. But what we have been able to see is that some of the wines, like the Big Easy or some of our Syrahs, or even some of our Pinot Noirs more recently, we're going back and tasting wines that are 8, 10, 15 years old, and they still have a lot of structure and they still have a lot of fruit and they're very alive in the bottle. And so I think that that's a testament to, I think, the winemaking behind this and what Blair and his team have been able to do. So our hope is, and I think we're pretty confident that that 15 to plus type of ageability exists in these wines. I would say especially in the cab.
James Melendez would like to know if you ever plan on making an Addendum white.
It's been suggested to us a couple times now. Actually, I don't know. Possibly. I think that's something that, if we did it, I would say probably a single. My daughter's
Your daughter wants it
because she wants an Addendum white. But I think it would probably be a single varietal or a single white offering, a white blend or a single varietal. But it will not be out of the 2017 vintage, but maybe down the road, yes.
We can get some Richie Vineyard Sauvignon Blanc.
There you go.
Be down for that.
That was pretty good.
Wait, gotta say the hashtag again because I mentioned somebody else. Add Addendum by Fess. Never mind, I wasn't talking about another winery. Sorry.
Jeff Kralik would also like to know, what were the thoughts of divorcing Addendum completely from the Fess Parker brand?
Well, I think a couple of things, and it's not new for us. We have Fess Parker is our anchor, our flagship, the foundation, the family name. There's a lot of heritage with that, and the wines have become, I think, as Richard said and complimented, the wines have become synonymous with Santa Barbara, and so I think there's a true sense of place attached to the Fess Parker name and brand, and that extends to hospitality in the hotel business as much as with the winery and just the man. Fess was really, he was I think synonymous with Santa Barbara. From a wine lineup standpoint, then when we decided to delve deeper into the Rhone varietals and get into Cuman and Marsanne and Grenache Blanc and Carignan, and we put all of that under our Epiphany program, and the whole Epiphany program is built around discovery and more esoteric Rhone varietals, and it's worked quite well, and it's a really interesting project for us, mostly direct to consumer. A lot of, like I said, a lot of breadth to the different varietals that we're working with in the different wines. So we've done this before in terms of separating programs from the different housed within the different brands, I should say. So when we looked at coming to a new varietal and a new AVA, it felt very natural for us for it to be an addition to or an addendum to Fess Parker, but not be housed within that brand that is so attached to Santa Barbara.
Slightly personal question.
Uh-oh.
Jeff wants to know, Ashley, how often do you get back to Lewiston, and do you miss Maine? He also said great cabs, but William and Faith still stink.
I actually, oh God, I'm going to date myself. I don't have to say the number of the reunion, but I just went to a big reunion, and I had the best time, I have to tell you. And I have a really good friend who lives in Small Point most of the year, and he's been very kind, and we have crashed at his place a number of times. My daughter, has seen real sand dollars on the beach, and Maine is super special. I know you probably feel the same way, but I've actually probably been back about 10 times since I graduated a really long time ago, but I can't get there enough. Just got to catch that window when the mosquitoes aren't really hellish. So, yeah. But love it. Love it.
James says, I noticed there's a colon at the end of addendum on the label. Is that because you're going to go to other regions?
Like a sequel.
Can't really disclose that, can we?
Couldn't resist the Hollywood connection, huh?
Yeah. Addendum actually has a lot of, I would say, literary applications. And so so I think when we were talking about this with the designers, they actually brought that to the table and said that the columns sort of talks about references being an addition and going further along as well as being, I think, a very interesting design element as well, and so we liked it.
Suitably vague answer, honey.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've been watching CNN. And sports.
Kellyanne Conway?
Yeah,
What?
and sports.
Oh.
There was one small technical question earlier, I can't recall who it was, but they said that the ABV was on the back for the, let's see, Cab Syrah, and for, he said the cabs, one of the cabs, but not on the other two. Was it, is there a change out?
The what?
He said the alcohol
Alcohol.
levels were, is that just because
Is
of
it
the?
not on it?
No,
And
they're
then
on
there's
there.
a
No,
brown
no. Essentially, what that came down to, I know exactly what it
Oh.
has to do with. It's all really quirky compliance things. So, to get the TTB sign off on them, we actually intended to put the alcohol on the back label of all of these. However, because of there was some quirk in the
that's weird.
compliance, which
I never noticed that.
I actually can't remember
Thank
the quirk,
you.
but they, but that's the reason that we ended up having to move it to the front on the other labels. Yeah,
We were excessively verbose on the back labels of the,
maybe.
something like that.
Yeah.
Would be the first time.
Any favorites tonight of this lineup?
There.
Go ahead.
I always have that line, like I'm not a man of favorites. I have 2 daughters and I like them
Ah, you're so
on
cute.
different days. I don't know. I'm actually kind of feeling the stagecoach right now tonight. Like I haven't tasted these wines since bottling actually, and I think they're really great. I love that kind of lifted red fruit that kind of comes from that one. I think they're all great for their own reasons. I'm a big fan of like Cab Syrah blends too. I think they're fun wines that you don't really see very often, and it kind of harkens me back to the working in McLarenville. So yeah, I mean that's probably what I would lean towards.
I'll give an answer, but I'd like to hear what other people think too. actually.
So far, we're hearing a kind of lean, it sounds like towards the Napa.
Just not piling on, but I totally agree. The
Yep.
blend, for whatever reason, is just kind of showing well after dark. Sort of.
I'll
Start
actually
where you
go
are.
a slightly different direction, and I tend to come back this way. I find, but as the Scavenger Lane is I think my favorite. And I think it kind of has some of those really classic Cabernet characteristics that I like a lot. I think it's that kind of that Rutherford Dust type of character. There's a little bit of that earthiness. And a lot of structure.
I don't know, now everyone's piping in with different stagecoach from
That's just because
Richard Jennings, yeah. Let's see, Jeff Kralick's winner is Rutherford. But look out for the stagecoach in 5 to 10 more years.
Mhm.
Clifford Brown likes the Cab Syrah blend. Michelle Williams in Dallas is digging the Rutherford. She loves the dust.
Yeah.
Thea loves the Napa blend. I think that's similar to Monday's verdict. And then I saved this one for last because I love this tasting note. But Steve McIntosh in Columbus, Ohio said we may have sped past the Napa Cab, but it's worth mentioning. Powerful nose gives way to an unapologetic attack with a kaleidoscope of flavors, deeply extracted sweet oak and high tones of crushed herbs, luxurious with fine tannins persisting through the long finish. Tastes expensive.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we put that on a back label? We might not let us
A
do
shelf
that.
talker.
Yeah. Yeah. Tastes expensive at the end. It's great.
That'd be a problem.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you for that,
Yeah.
Steve.
So, Tim, the ever curious Jeff Kralick wants to know how it was when you first met Fess. He wanted to know if you were starstruck.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't starstruck, but I was dating his daughter, and so it was a little nerve-wracking in that
When
regard.
did you
So
first meet him? Was that his birthday party?
it was the day before his 75th birthday party.
Ooh,
Yeah.
so he was probably really cranky.
And I
Your
met
birthday
him.
was
I
right
met him
around
at the
that time.
winery. So just briefly, so I worked for Northern California wineries. My family's in the business. After I finished college, I got into the business working up here. Ashley and I met on a wine industry trip throughout Australia, of all places. Most of the major growing regions. We hit it off down here. We dated when we got back. I migrated down to Santa Barbara, and so as we were dating, I was going down to visit. And I remember the first time I met Fess was in his office. It was in his office. It was Vintners Festival. It was the day before Vintners Festival. That's right. It was in his office, and as you can imagine, Fess was all of 6'6", and a big man, and
Big man.
and a booming voice, and he just kept unfolding out of his seat to give me a handshake and towered over me. And, Tim, I've heard a lot about you, and it's nice to meet you. And so I wondered exactly what that meant. I hope it was all good. And but quickly came to really really appreciate him as just this wonderful man with a wealth of experiences and knowledge, and really genuine. And really, became a mentor of mine, I can honestly say, and just cherish the time that I had to spend with him, which was a little over 10 years, and it was great.
Tim gave him his last beer.
I did.
Oh.
I did.
Anyway.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe we're down to the last 5 minutes or so. Jeff with his excellent questions. Tim, what's the biggest difference between working for Gallo and for a family-run winery?
No tie.
Well, they're both family.
Yeah, well, I think.
Gosh, there's so many. I mean, it's very night and day. I'll say this: working at Gallo gave me and Kimberly, who also spent some time there, I think gave us a lot of opportunity, gave us a lot of education. That's exactly. It gave us a lot of education. You had, you were pushed, you were driven. There was a culture of achievement there, which is why they've done so many incredible things in this business over decades, and just I think instilled a work ethic, a passion for what you're doing. However, at the same time, for me, it pushed me away from a lot of things that I love about the wine industry, going back to being my family being involved, which is a connection to working with winemakers, talking about vineyards, talking about sites, talking about how things are evolving in the barrels, and putting together and a little bit more of the handcrafted side of things. So what we're able to do collaboratively here is really rewarding, because one, we're family, a close family. Two, we were connected all the way from the beginning to the end of the process, and so to me that's the most rewarding part of what we're doing right now.
I will tell you, he scared the bejesus out of our sales force when he came on board. It went from Montessori to, oh God. You were happy you didn't have to wear a tie to work.
That's very true. No ties.
Except family ties, that's all.
Yeah, there we go.
Family ties.
Michael Servant said, thank you for sharing about meeting Wes Parker, Tim. He said, I too had the pleasure of meeting him as a young writer.
Michael, where have you been? Like, I know you're in town.
He was at the Weird Star
Come
recently.
back.
Did you go to Weird
excellent.
Star? Right,
Excellent.
great.
Yeah. Come back and see
Come
us.
with us. Service might be better.
All right. Maybe some final thoughts from y'all?
This is cool. I mean, for me, whenever Tim gets tired of me being underfoot, he sends me to a market somewhere around the country to sell wine, and I love it. I love getting to see the country and check out what's kind of trending in different restaurants and everything. So it's very cool to have an audience from all over. And is it Dizelle?
Dizelle, yeah.
Dizelle, I used to live in Alexandria. I was at East Alexandria Avenue, right near T.C. Williams High School. So hope you're somewhere near there. Beautiful part of the country. I have lots of friends there. So if I come to town, I'm going to track you down through Kimberly, and we'll go have a beer. This has been fun.
Yeah, this has been great. I mean, it's kind of weird being on this side of the camera and not seeing all you guys out there, but it's fun. I'm glad that we were able to talk about these wines and kind of present these wines, and hopefully everybody liked them, and glad to be a part of this program.
Thank you all for joining us this evening. Hopefully you have had some fun too. Enjoy the wines. Please come see us. You all have probably been to Napa and Sonoma a million times, and we love it. I'm originally from up that way, but Santa Barbara is pretty special, and we would love to share that with you, and whether that be over some wine or a cold beer at the Bear and Star or what have you, but we'd love to have it. And I guess the last thing that I would say is that for me, this is maybe one of the other reasons why we got into Addendum and have pushed this way, is that this is really exciting for me, and it's fun and it's new, and I think that's we've been around Fess Parker's been around for over 28 years now, and we have our kids are getting ready to come into the business, are starting now, and I think continuing to do things that are new and fresh and rewarding and exciting is really important, and so hopefully we'll continue to do it, and you'll keep coming along with us, and thank you very much.